This Planning Council meeting of Monday, December 16th to order. The meeting will be streamed live and recorded for public viewing on the town's YouTube page. Period. So we acknowledge that this land in which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral land of the Chippewa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as the Anishinaabe. It is through the connection of the Anishinaabe with the spirit of the land, water, and air that we recognize their unique cultures, traditions, and values. Together as treaty people, we have a shared responsibility to act with respect to the environment that sustains all life, protecting the future for those generations to come. So at the appropriate time, if the council has any pecuniary efforts declared at that time, please. Do we have any delegations?
We do, your worship. We have a delegation who is in attendance online from SEGAL Construction. And Kenzie's gonna.
Hi there.
There we go.
Okay, you're Mr. Siegel,
Yes, I am.
right? You have a presentation and we're all ready to listen to it. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Daniel Siegel. There should be some slides to go with it. In any case, I'm a Terran builder who's been doing laneway houses and garden suites since about 2020. And about 6 months ago, I pivoted away from doing that towards trying to come up with a solution to the housing crisis in Ontario. Specifically, I've been doing delegations such as this at about 50 other municipalities across the province to present a model that separates the value of the land from the value of the house in order to sell houses at or below the affordable detached purchase price as defined by the Building Faster bill that in your municipality I think is about 400 and change per detached house, $400,000. With that, I just wanted to mention that it's affordable housing is almost like an endangered species in the province. It's only been built twice in Canadian history, in the 1920s to the 1940s, and then again in the 1970s and the 1980s. But outside that time period, no one's really been filling the gap from where the upper tier of Lambton County to today. Private developers aren't building affordable housing or attainable housing. And I think that disconnect between the purchase price of where it is now versus where it was 20 years ago speaks to the lack of affordability. And I think the solution comes with increasing supply of attainable homes in the province. MPAC did a report in 2013 and found that 79% of houses cost less than $500,000. And then they did the same report in 2023 and found that only 17% cost less than $500,000. And what that shows us is that what we knew is that it's really hard to find a house that's affordable. And so what you might have already noticed is that people who are moving out of their parents' basement or people looking to downsize don't have very many options. And most municipalities don't think that it should be within their jurisdiction to support housing construction. Generally, that's delegated to the upper tier municipality, who's responsible from everything from transitional housing right up to rent geared to income. Well, sorry, let me just revise something I said earlier. It's actually $452,700, which is the affordable detached purchase price in your municipality. But the goal here is that I'm looking to work with municipalities to build subdivisions of attainable houses. To support that, if you're interested in discussing further, I suggest that this delegation be referred to staff. But I've got innovative ideas on how to do this at a scale that hasn't been seen since the 70s and 80s. And I think it's incumbent upon different levels of government to take on a concerted approach to address this issue because it won't be addressed by the private sector without direct intervention. So with that, I would point you to the presentation that I have in the agenda. It goes over the attributes of the types of housing I want to build. And if your municipality is interested in supporting an effort to building subdivisions of attainable houses for home ownership, um, this um, this effort could be supported either through land that you're looking to develop, or else through funding sewage and well systems on unserviced land in addition to that. So with that, I want to thank you for your time this evening, and I'm here if you have any questions.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for our presenter? Anyone in council? No questions? Well, I mean,
Where is your organization from, Mr. Siegel?
Well, I'm
Where
in
are you stationed?
Toronto, but I'm working with prefabricated builders across the province. So uh, ultimately, it's more an issue of what is the right product for the community that we're trying to serve, whether that's first-time home buyers, elderly, or workers. So each manufacturer has something that they're really good at, and it's important to figure out what the right pair should be, whether that's people looking to downsize or looking to get into their first home or worker housing. So it's really driven by demand as to what the right product should be.
My second question would be, as you very well know, the government themselves are promoting big time affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
Are you in any which way partnering or dealing with the government on affordable housing? And I'm basically talking provincial here.
Yeah, so great question. The MMAH is they have grand visions when it comes to housing. Housing accelerator funding is where a lot of municipalities are going when it comes to affordable housing. Yeah, I've had meetings with the chief stakeholder relation for Minister Calandra, I believe his name is. At this point, I frankly haven't gotten much besides we'll look into it and get back to you. A lot of these projects that I'm looking at doing over 2025 are in municipalities with less than 25,000 residents. And I would say that across the board, it seems as though a lot of the efforts that are being made by the provincial government are in larger communities.
anyone else? Rodriguez?
I'd just like to comment that as you noted, the province defined affordable housing for Plympton-Wyoming is one of the highest in the span of our area at 452,000, which indicates that the costs of construction here are a lot higher due to our location. Probably geographic has a lot to do with it. So it makes it hard to build affordable housing, truly affordable housing. And typically affordable housing is also located near amenities such as public transit, walking distance to schools, grocery, that kind of stuff, which again, we're lacking in our jurisdiction. So although I like the concept of trying to bring in more affordable housing, we truly need to kind of look at where that should be and how affordable it really is. 452,000 would not be considered affordable for a lot of people.
That's a really good point. And the other thing that doesn't make any sense is that you have a lot of northern communities where the affordable purchase price is in like the low 200s, and that doesn't even cover the cost of construction plus your warranties plus your realtor fees. It actually makes no sense to build, whereas it actually makes sense to build here. And that is a huge oversight, and I can't reconcile it either.
Mr. Vacy.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Looking at your presentation, you were looking at like refabbing C-cans and stuff, are you not?
No, so the products that I'm working with and the builders that I'm partnering with do CSAZ 277 prefabricated homes. So these are prefabricated houses that sit on helical piles for the most part. They'll arrive on site on a flatbed truck and they'll be put into place with a crane. So these are houses that are almost ready for occupancy. And that's how, in my model, we're able to deploy a large number of affordable houses quickly. So then we're not bogged down in red tape. We're not bogged down with labor constraints, and we're not really bogged down by supply chain issues.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Deputy Mayor.
I do have one question, and that's, are you just interested in dealing with a municipality rather than private ownership?
So that's a great question. When you're providing a social good in the private sector, you sell at the highest price that the market could bear. In solving the housing crisis, it involves a societal good, which is the creation of houses at or below the purchase price and maintaining it affordable. And if I was purely a for-profit company and didn't have social conscious goals, it wouldn't be successful because I would sell houses very cheaply and somebody would come in and flip them 3 weeks later. In order for it to maintain the affordability of these houses, one of the key features is the use of community land trusts and leasehold mortgages. And for that to work, it requires a little bit of municipal involvement from the underwriting perspective. So without going into too much detail, the municipalities are key to making this work because otherwise they'll just sell at whatever the highest bidder is willing to pay.
Well, without having any further questions, we thank you for your presentation, and if we discuss it and we are interested, you'll hear from us, okay?
Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
So we have any business arising from previous meetings?
Do your worship, so your first motion then.
Okay. Moved by Mr. Wolfett, seconded by Ms. Rodriguez, that the report by Ella Flynn, Executive Assistant Deputy Clerk, and Adam Sabansky, Chief Administrative Officer, dated December 10th, 2024, regarding the simplified short-term rental STR licensing bylaw be received, and that the proposed bylaw be approved in draft form, and that staff be directed to bring back a finalized version of the bylaw together with the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments for council's consideration at a future meeting. Any discussion on this? Mr. Bougen.
Thank you. I just wanted to make just a note, in terms of the bylaw itself, we can look at it when we get it. But since the pricing breakdown was here, my concern is the price point being a little low for a cost recovery program that doesn't burden the general tax base. Only because it's assuming a very specific number of short-term rentals that we had at the peak at some certain time when we gathered the data. And for all we know, it could be 55, it could be 60. And the program, in my opinion, is supposed to be self-funded. So I'd be more comfortable with a fee closer to 400. I think it's just adds to that level of we don't know how much are going to continue operating or want to continue operating under a framework. It also takes into consideration a little bit more money for the reserve if we have to go down the path of identifying legal non-conforming or discussing or figuring out legal non-conforming status for properties. And then the other note there just because I know there was an email here as well, with legal non-conforming status. I still have a hard time believing that it's going to be super difficult to prove non-continued use. I mean, the burden of proof is going to lie with the property owner. So if an owner claims their short-term rental is legal non-conforming, it's their responsibility to prove it. And then without evidence, we would treat it as a non-compliant property and issue fines. And if it's legal non-conforming and that they chose not to get a license under this program, then that, in my opinion, is clearly signaling abandonment of that use of the property, which would make our case even stronger that it isn't legal non-conforming. So I have a little more confidence in that concern over the legal non-conforming because of having a program like this, where if you don't get a license, then you're making a clear statement you're not operating.
Right.
That's kind of where I'm at, but I personally, I think 400 is still a very reasonable fee, but it also covers our bases just as this. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you. I disagree. I think, when we first discussed this, when we were comparing owner occupied versus short-term rental not owner occupied, there wasn't a lot of desire because we didn't want all the enforcement and costs that go with it, but we seem to have some here. Because we were worried about cost recovery on that. But I think there's quite a bit of, I look back at when you guys all first started this whole conversation, and at that time, there were probably over 100 short-term rentals, and we're, 4 or 5 years later into this, and we're down to 66. So it just shows that there's not because they're all in Plympton Shores, but I don't think we need to worry about anything here because there isn't a big want for them or properties wanting to do them here anyway. And I think you've got a healthy reserve fund going there too, and limited bylaws as it relates to the having the license or not. And I think with the whole pivoting between using it as short-term rental and not using it as a short-term rental, obviously we were given clear direction on that. But once the bylaw goes in effect, I would think there would be a time limit to clear that status of legal non-conforming and not like a year or two later try and do that. Do you see what I'm saying?
Not quite.
No.
No, I'm a little confused on that with your last statement.
Yeah, so you have 66 apparently
Yeah.
that would be grandfathered or
Right.
whatever of regular short-term rentals. I would think there should be maybe a timeline for them to declare or to apply that they are this and show you that they are. Do you see what I'm saying? And not a year or two
I think
later.
Ella can answer that.
Oh, sorry. Am I making any sense?
No, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
So, you could say, a year after the bylaw is approved, they would have until that year, because then they would have that time to prove the continuous use. In speaking with our legal counsel, it's a little challenging to set a timeline for continuous use because circumstances may come up. So we might use, 1 year as a guideline. Or at least one occurrence of a rental needs to happen. However, we were advised things such as building renovations, or if there was, a fire or a flood, something kind of beyond the owner's control that caused them to not be able to rent the property, and it was restored back to the same use, then we might have a hard time implementing that 1 year. So it would kind of all need to be addressed on a case-by-case basis.
Yes, no, I agree with that because I remember there were a lot of different circumstances. Okay, so that's good. She's saying you're stating that a year to declare those. Okay,
1 year after the bylaw is passed. They have
within a year.
need to prove that they are
Legal non-
SDR. Oh, legal non-conforming SDR.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Mr. Bolvin, do you have any questions?
Well, we've been beating this one around the bush for several years now. Started out very complicated, in my opinion, and this simplifies it. In my mind, I certainly approve of the owner occupied short-term rentals. That was one thing that I wanted from the get-go. We have people here that depend on their short-term rental for paying their property taxes. And I think that we certainly need to make sure those people are taken into consideration. Not everybody here can afford a $500,000 home, or even sometimes not even being able to pay their taxes. So there's circumstances there that short-term rentals are very important here to this community. I like this simplified bylaw. I believe the prices, the fees are adequate. And there's nothing says they can't be adjusted down the road if, in fact, as a fellow counselor has said, if, to make sure there's enough reserves, we find out the first year not getting enough in reserve or meeting our needs, it can always be adjusted. And I think those words should be in there. They may be in there, but there's a lot of pages to this. And the only other question I would have is just to verify that existing short-term rental owner occupied, do they have to register? Or are they grandfathered?
Correct, if I may. So this bylaw would apply to both owner occupied short-term rentals and pre-existing short-term rentals, or the grandfathered short-term rentals. They would all follow the same rules, go through the same licensing process. It would just be a blanket program throughout the whole entire municipality.
So they would have to pay the fee. Now, that wasn't originally what I was after, for sure. I was after that whoever's short-term rental homeowner would not be part of this. So that's a change here, if that is in here, by the way. I don't think I can support this if that's not the case. We've talked right up to this meeting that would be the case. I don't know why that's changed. Fellow councilors, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was my assumption.
I believe the direction that rose out of that last meeting, that is all short-term rentals would be subject to the registration bylaw or licensing bylaw.
If I may, I would agree with Councillor Wovat, and that's why I kind of started off by saying we agreed that when I had the discussion that they wouldn't be subject to this stuff, but here they are subject to this stuff. So, in all fairness to Councillor Wovat, he's speaking to owner occupied, not the regular grandfather.
Correct.
And that was my understanding as well, that they would not be subject to.
Mr. Belgian?
Yeah, I was in the assumption, that's why I think the fee needs to be higher for the ones that aren't exempt, which would be occupied short-term rentals. I was under the impression, I thought we talked about there would be no fee associated with owner occupied short-term rentals, because the issues we're trying to resolve in the community are typically when there's an absent landlord.
So we should straighten this out. Yes. Yes, I was going to ask you, because I can't see if he's on it. That's chairs in the way.
We'd leave it on the Zoom, please, thank you.
Yeah, but I can see him on that thing. This chairs in the way.
Madam
Okay.
Chair.
Yes, Mr. Bays, you go.
Yes, I agree with everybody there that owner occupied still have to register and do all that, but there'd be no fee. I agree with Mr. Bojan that a $400 license fee is probably for most of them less than one night's rental, which is peanuts. So I would like to see that fund build, and if we can lower it 5 years from now, we lower it, but I can see us dipping into our own money, especially in the first few years if we have problems. So that's all I've got.
Thank you, Mike. Ms. Rodriguez.
So as much as all that sounds good, makes sense, how do you police it? You have, you know what I mean? Like, how do you know if somebody's being not occupied? You have all these logistics that still have to be worked out. So it's almost, to me, reasonable that they did put in this 300 across the board, even though that's not what we agreed to, because you have to look at it right across the board. You're not going to be charging grandfathered for policing the whole jurisdiction as a whole. instead of being fair across the board. So you create a bias there. So I can understand the logistics of why you're that way, because obviously there's still a cost, no matter what. Which we didn't discuss or contemplate when we were saying no cost to owner occupied.
Mr. Boucher?
Yeah, I think there's ways to know. I mean, it depends on what the definition of owner occupied ended up being. If we're doing principal residence, that's quite clear and obvious how to prove principal residence. You can only have one principal residence, and that's easy to do. If you want to do owner occupied, it becomes quite clear on advertisements if it's a whole home rental or not. If it's on VRBO, it's a whole home rental. If it's advertising a 5-bedroom house and it's advertising 5 bedrooms, it's a whole home rental. So I do think there's ways to know if it's, depending if it's principal residence or home owner occupied, there's a way to know.
If it was owner occupied is what we're going for, not necessarily residents.
And going back to, like, again, the whole, when we did the consultation, we were addressing specific things: parking, noise, safety. Those are all the things that we were trying to address. And especially once you have the Granicus service of the 24/7 hotline and the responsible person for the properties, there are avenues in this program to help assist with that. But again, I don't see why. And if I live upstairs and I'm renting out a bedroom, it's a totally different ballgame than an investment property as a whole home rental. So I do see them as two separate things.
Okay, are you clear on anything here, Ella? That's,
It seems like there's mixed
yes.
opinions across the room, so I don't feel like I have direction.
Or I think the first thing that we need to clarify is, and again, are whether or not we are licensing all short-term rentals that meet our future zoning bylaw for owner occupied only, and therefore the also illegal non-conforming or pre-existing ones, or are we only licensing the pre-existing ones? And then how do we confirm that how do we have a mechanism to work with the other individuals to ensure they're meeting the regulations and the fact that they're owner occupied? So I guess that'll be the first question. Are we licensing all short-term rentals that meet the intent of our bylaw? Or are we licensing just the pre-existing ones?
I think we better get an opinion on that, Mr. Boucher.
If we're licensing all, then I think we should follow the suit of other municipalities where there's a tiered, at very bare minimum, a tiered fee. So if you're a whole home investment property operating as a short-term rental, $400. And then if you're an owner occupied, you live there, it's your principal residence, whatever that definition is, then you'd be paying for the staff time. So it would be a lower fee.
So
Many
we should have
municipalities do that.
established fee though.
If we're doing both, yeah.
So, okay, so will we say 300 then? Can we use that for the ones that are owner occupied going to be? The new ones?
I think Councillor Boucher suggested a lower, just
Well-
straight staff time recovery.
I think he did suggest that, but
I don't know what that
suggested
would be.
You
300.
didn't have a dollar.
I mean, my preference is not having them part of it at all. Because I don't think they're part of what this whole purpose and this whole exercise was for. I think they should be exempt from a licensing program.
Oh, the owner occupied.
That's my option one. And option two is if we're doing one and I'm fine to get on board with that. If we do get on board for a license program that covers all of them, I do think it has to be a tiered license fee. So I'll just call it, looking at here, staff time is $120.
So to answer the first question, your first preference is to only license the pre-existing short-term rentals, and that the owner occupied short-term rentals would be exempt from the licensing program.
No,
If secondary, if we move forward with licensing them all, there would be a tiered system. But your preference is to only license pre-existing short-term rentals.
Alex's preference.
Correct. And I think if I remember correctly, when we talked about it, it was the owner occupied people are registered. My name is Alex. I have a owner occupied short-term rental. Here's my address. Not part of the licensing program. Separate.
Yes.
Can I maybe try to clarify something?
Yeah, right.
I wasn't at the last meeting, so I don't know the conversation that happened. But I think the way that the bylaw has been simplified, it really is just a registration form. like that form that they have to sign. It won't be cumbersome on owner occupied. They're just signing off an attestation that it's safe and fire and all that kind of stuff. So there isn't that cumbersome on them, then they're still registered, because if not, we would have a registration bylaw for one and a licensing bylaw for the other. Completely understand you could exempt, there can be a section that exempts them from those fees or a lesser fee, as you say, but having everybody all in one program really seems a little bit more seamless for us, like.
And then if council wants to reduce the fee for the owner occupied or eliminate the fee for owner occupied, it's still there. So they're still coming, they're signing the attestation and the form, and they keep calm and carry on without having to pay a fee if that's council's preference.
So I'm fine with that, with a reduced or no fee for owner occupied.
So, Mr. Vacy, did you want to say some more?
You're unmuted. Oh,
No, I agree exactly what Mr. Bojan's talking about. I think they should register so we know who they are, their owner operator. We've never had a problem with any of them, so no fee if possible, and then carry on with what we've already got going.
So that would be two persons, counselors in favor of
Right.
registering all, but having no fee for the owner occupied.
Yes,
It sits currently.
thank you.
Are you done, Mr. Vacy?
yes.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm done, thank you.
Mr. Wolvet, did,
One other thing I'd like to talk about is this Granicus services. I see no reason why we need that, why we can't manage this through our own bylaw and through our own staff.
One would be our staff and our bylaw enforcement do not have a 24/7 hotline. And they have AI that monitors the program, so it's much quicker and easier for them to be able to maintain that. They would have a listing of all the individuals who are responsible for the STRs. So if they did get a phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning, they would be able to contact that responsible person. You could then contact either the neighbor or the occupier of the short-term rental if there was an issue. So setting that up on our side would be problematic, as we do not have a call center. It would likely end up going to Public Works, and then we'd have to call bylaw enforcement through our 24/7 number, and then have them go out. Having them deal with it through this process would actually be cheaper after a few 3-hour calls for between Public Works and our bylaw enforcement officers.
Still another $6,000, which got to be passed on to the registered short-term rental. We do have emergency number for water, do we not? 24/7?
That goes to a Jacobs call center, and that's strictly for water and sewer emergencies only. We do have a on-call supervisor, which carries a on-call number for road emergencies. And in theory, we could have them take that, but they would not necessarily, they're not bylaw enforcement officers. So then we would have to call the on-call bylaw enforcement officer to go out and attend the site.
Okay, I'm just bringing it up because it's one more charge is going to be charged to somebody, one more fee, and we do have a fairly good sized staff and bylaw officers.
yeah, but
Anyways, just giving my opinion.
I just wondered, like, they don't want to be getting called out at 3 in the morning or something.
That's kind of too bad if you're a bylaw officer, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but it's more than just a bylaw officer who's involved. It goes to another first. Yes, Mr. Bowden.
And again, going back to the reason we're here, because it's not happening. So if you do have a problem next door and you try to find a bylaw number, there isn't one. You can't get a bylaw officer out at 1 in the morning. And so this 24/7 hotline, truly, not only is it an option, but if it's written like the way, if someone calls a hotline, it notifies a responsible person for that property. So if my neighbor is a short-term rental and I call this hotline because they're having a party with 50 people, that hotline then calls and texts the responsible person for that property to at least attempt to resolve the issue. So it at least adds a layer of some sort of tangible enforcement, not to mention encouraging responsible hosting. Because if I have a short-term rental, if my phone rings at 1 in the morning, I'm not gonna be happy either. So to be honest with you, you're getting a 24/7 hotline you're getting an online bylaw enforcement for a pretty good price, 24/7. And again, it's just the cost of having responsible hosting if we're gonna do this.
But Granicus, it really isn't a bylaw enforcement. They're just taking the initial calls, right?
They take the complaint and they call the property owner.
And they report back to us, bylaw enforcement can follow up during the work week and lay fines if deemed necessary.
So we also have some correspondence.
You
Pardon?
didn't ask me.
Sorry?
You didn't ask.
Oh, did you have your hand up again? Sorry.
No, you were going around to ask everybody to answer.
Before we, sorry, Councilor Rodriguez, I don't think Councilor Wolfett actually gave us the opinion. He gave us the opinion in regards to Granicus, but he didn't give us an opinion whether he was
Right.
comfortable with a short-term rent having all register, but exempting the owner occupied from paying it.
I can certainly buy into that for sure.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Rodriguez.
Thank you. So I go back to that, you're basing this on that non-owner occupied are going to be your problem and not owner occupied. And you're paying $5,800 a year and going to make the non-owner occupied bear the brunt when you may in fact get calls for owner occupied. This is to not only allow for that 24/7 hotline, it's also for them to constantly be monitoring for short-term rentals that might not be like properly or registered. Those could very well be owner occupied as well. So I don't know why we're focused on one versus the other when it applies across the board. Otherwise, you're creating an unfair bias in one sector when it applies.
So
And it could very well happen in both cases. So I would agree with the two-tier. For sure, owner occupied versus, I don't think it should be totally swayed in one way or the other. Like, 400 and 200, I'm fine with.
So to scope the conversation, it appears council as a whole who's here tonight is in favor of a two-tiered licensing system, whereas the legal non-conforming or pre-existing would be subject to the full program and full fee, and that the owner occupied short-term rentals would be still subject to the program, however, they would get a reduced fee. So the discussion seems to be around what the value of the general program fee is versus what the reduced fee is. So we've heard that initial comment that if it's not only owner occupied who are paying the bulk of the cost, the pre-existing that are paying the bulk of the cost of $400 was set. I did not see anyone overly objective to a $400 fee for that group. So is it safe to presume from council that for the pre-existing non-owner occupied, that a fee of $400 would be generally acceptable?
Belgian nodding, yes. Mr. Bullitt, yes. Mr. Vacy?
Yeah.
And Ms. Rodriguez, yes.
Okay. So now it is a matter of what the reduction of the fee looks like. We've had a number of members suggest that a no fee is appropriate. We've also had a suggestion that a fee is appropriate. Even owner occupied systems will have time staffed. So there will be time put into reviewing the applications and filing out the paperwork. Additionally, there is a Granicus cost. So I would suggest that we consider a half of the $400 and $200, but I'm open to suggestions that we're trying to find a value that would work. And without knowing the exact numbers that are going to be occupied at the exact time, it's hard to give an exact number to consider.
Mr. Wolfett?
I would say exempt,
Exempt fully, sir?
fully exempt from the fee. Absolutely. They register, that's it.
Mr. Belgian, did you?
Sorry, I'm just trying to find the staff report again.
Okay, while you're doing that, Ms. Rodriguez?
Sorry, yes, 200, again, this is affecting the entire community. Those owner occupied are also being policed, so there also is a cost to that, so.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Vacy?
Yeah, 200 keeps it simple, half the price of the other. I like that.
Mr. Belgian?
Yeah, 120 for staff and 88 for Granicus is what's listed in the staff report, which is
Yeah.
200, call it 200
So
bucks.
it's 200. All right,
So direction as it stands today, we will be moving forward with a licensing program that is two-tiered. Each short-term rental, no matter whether it's owner occupied or not, is subject to the licensing program. But there is a tier when it comes to fees. A pre-existing short-term rental will pay a registration licensing fee of $400. A owner-occupied short-term rental will pay a registration / licensing fee of $200 by the consensus of council at this time. That's a question or a statement?
No, just a statement.
Yes.
Just to clarify this, staff will amend the bylaw to, as the motion says, then bring it forward for consideration. So I just want to be clear that the bylaw is not approved this evening.
Yeah.
We'll make those amendments and it will come forward at a public meeting with the
Right.
ZBA and OPA.
Right, just,
The licensing fee be through the comprehensive fees bylaw.
We'll have to amend that.
Yeah, so I don't know that it needs to be spoken to in the short-term rental licensing bylaw itself.
Yes, we'll have to amend that.
Well, your
Just
staff.
direction to
report
staff,
for the
yeah.
house will have to be clear, but we'll have to make sure that we separate them out.
so any other comments from council? We had some correspondence from Mr. Dimer. So have we addressed all his concerns?
I would not suggest that the decision of council as a whole would necessarily directly address all of Mr. Dahmer's concerns. He was looking for a more rigorous control over short-term rentals. But we did our best to
Yes.
put some controls in there to mitigate some of the concerns based on our previous discussions while honoring the council's wishes to make it a simplified bylaw.
Okay, thank you. Do I need to read this motion again? I think you probably all have it in front of you.
Form.
Sir?
Oh, sorry.
Did you say?
I said, yeah, we have to do a formal vote, so yes.
Yes, well,
So yes, please.
thank you. That the report by Ella Flynn, Executive Assistant Deputy Clerk, and Adam Sabansky, Chief Administrative Officer, dated December 10th, 2024, regarding the simplified short-term rental STR licensing bylaw be received, that the proposed bylaw be approved in draft form. Should I put in here
As
with,
amended would probably be appropriate, madam.
yes. It was Mr. Wolvett and Ms. Rodriguez that moved in second. Is that okay? I put in as amended?
I know,
Yeah, you did. Thank you.
tried not to.
And that staff be directed to bring back a finalized version of the bylaw together with the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments for council's consideration at a future meeting. All in favor? Carried. Do I have to do this again? Hey, I'll move on to Minister's regulation regarding additional residential units. So moved by Mr. Belgian, seconded by Ms. Rodriguez, that the information report by Maria Kosarasi, Senior Planner, dated December 6, 2024, providing an update on the minister's regulation regarding additional residential units, ARUs, be received. And would you like to tell us what that's all about, Maria?
Thank you. This is just an update from the previous council meeting where we had discussion about the minister's regulation for additional residential units. The minister has in fact passed the minister's regulation as previously presented. It is in effect as of November the 20th. Staff received a letter dated November 28th from the minister. But the regulation or the amended regulation has already been filed and posted, so it is in effect as of November 20th. There aren't any changes other than for the building distance separation. It is now put to the 4 meters. However, if municipal zoning bylaw amendments require a smaller distance than the 4 meters, then that is acceptable and is not overridden by intersection. But everything else remains the same in terms of the angular plane, the minimum lot coverage, the floor space index, and minimum lot size.
So anyone can have an additional residential unit.
Yes, so on residential lots in the urban settlement area, properties that are zoned for single detached, semi-detached and row house. They are permitted up to 3 residential units. One is the primary dwelling and the other 2 would be the additional residential units. So you could have 3 in the primary dwelling, or you could have one of which is the primary, or you could have the primary and 1 additional residential unit in the main dwelling, plus 1 in a detached structure.
So if you have a detached structure, can it go through the services that are provided to the main unit? Or does it have to have its own connections to?
Yeah, so I should clarify that these additional residential units are permitted in the urban settlement area and on properties that are fully serviced, water and sewer, and the additional residential units are to be connected to that servicing.
Yeah, but do they have to go to that servicing, or can they go through the main house? You know, like
They can go through the main house.
They can go through
They'd be
that?
treated as any other residential unit where they can go through the main
Okay,
house.
all right, thank you.
Some property owners are actually, our policies are that multi-res units are actually all serviced through the same unit. So either it'd have a meter pit at the property line, or it would go through the existing meter in the dwelling and then go out to each residential
Okay.
unit.
Mr. Vaizey, you had a question?
Yes, I don't understand how this can get pushed through where a neighborhood could literally more than triple the density of the people living in that neighborhood, and what effect it has on our infrastructure as far as sewer, water. It seems like there's been no input through fire services to how do we protect these second and third units that are crammed in the backyard of somebody's lot. And nothing to say about the neighbors who bought a single house and now all of a sudden have 3 houses literally stacked on top of each other right beside you.
Yeah, I'll let.
This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. It reminds me of third world countries where we're just gonna start stacking homes one on top of the other so we can keep up with the population.
So
I think it's ludicrous.
I'll let Maria answer that after I comment. Have you not worked with the province before? Go ahead, Maria.
So building code, fire code, and the Conservation Authorities Act, all those still apply. Those are not overridden by these regulations. So there is still, there are the additional protections under those specific pieces of legislation will continue in terms of these builds. So change of use permits may be required, but these would all be initiated or should be initiated through the building permit process. So those those pieces of legislation are not overridden by this minister's regulation.
Wow.
Did you like that answer, Mr. Vaizey?
No, not at all. I know you're not the one writing this thing, but I don't. I'll just shut up. Thank you.
Well, you're feeling better
Yeah, I
anyway,
was
aren't
just
you?
gonna say that. Apparently, Mr. Vaizey's feeling a lot better.
You had some comment?
Yes, thank you. So, the County of Lambton has this, grant program where they allow up to, $50,000 towards an ADU.
Hey, are you?
Here are you? Residential.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think it's been up for a year or so. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about? Not one person has taken them up on their own. Not one. Because the restrictions are the conditions are to make it affordable, to try and get more affordable additional dwelling units. But those conditions are there are a long list of conditions, and they started advertising even a couple months ago, trying to get people to buy in. So I don't think, especially if people aren't getting funding for this kind of thing, you're gonna see a lot of people run out and build these things and congest our neighborhoods. Not a lot of people want their parents living on the same property or kids or.
Mhm.
I personally would be okay with it, but not a lot of people would be. But do you know that program I'm talking about?
Through your chair. Yes, staff are aware of the program. It's administered through the housing department. There is information on the website in terms of the program and the program criteria. If council would like more information, we would request it through housing or have a housing representative come to present some additional information, but it is fully administered through the housing department and social services.
Okay.
I think it actually would.
What for us? Well, I think if someone's interested in doing this, they can go to the county and they can administer that. Okay, yes, but our staff will be aware of it and they'll be able to direct them to the right place rather than we take, give them the wrong information or something. Let them go there.
Okay. I thought it'd be like education.
Yeah, well, maybe.
We can also share the county's media posts in that regard.
Okay, that'd be a good idea.
Okay, so,
Can I say,
yes, of course.
I think it's an interesting conversation. And I agree with Mr. Vasey, his comments. It's kind of funny, we just went through the whole discussion here on short-term rentals and worrying about people making noise, having too many people parking and having all this kind of stuff. And here we are now, we can have 3 different residents on our own piece of property. And my own situation, I live very, very close to the lake. I have a gorgeous garage that could be turned over as a second residence very quickly, rented for 30 days, which wouldn't be a short-term rental. And they go down to the beach every day and have fun. Like, it's really just kind of interesting to see that the government has done this, allowing 3 residents on the same piece of property. Yeah, I'm not sure that's going to be big time here in Plympton-Wyoming, but in some areas that will have quite an effect on a neighborhood. So anyways, that's just a
Okay,
comment.
thanks for your comments. And as I said to Mr. Bay, haven't you dealt with the province before?
Yes, ma'am.
So, is everybody in favor of accepting, receiving Kosarashi's report? Thank you. Carried. Staff reports. Moved by Ms. Rodriguez, seconded by Mr. Bougen, that the report by Maria Kosarasi, Senior Planner dated December 6, 2024 regarding Silver Springs subdivision, phase 2 assumption be received and that bylaw 147 of 2024 be taken as having been read 3 times and finally passed, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the said bylaw accordingly. Any discussions on this? Assuming the Silver Springs subdivision. Ms. Rodriguez?
Yeah. I don't know, we've done a couple of things where we're like, they're almost there, let's assume it. I don't know why we do that. Why do we just not wait till they're in compliance and assume it? Just because it's at the 2-year deadline, is there some problem of extending that until they're in full compliance?
Take that, or does Mr. De Silva?
Oh, I'm
I'm
sorry.
gonna start by making a basic, simple comment, then I'll let Mr. De Silva finish it. In the past, where a developer has had only very minor outstanding deficiencies, we have allowed them to move forward into the assumption, provided that they have provided the appropriate securities. I can let Mr. Silva get into details in regards to what those outstanding deficiencies are at this time, if you like.
Oh,
Go ahead, Mr. De Silva.
Through the chair. So if in this particular development, like installing the 30 boulevard trees, for us to wait for 30 more houses to be built, we don't want to install those trees too far in advance, because when a builder goes in there and they start building, typically those trees will die or they'll get damaged. So that's the reason on that one. The valve extensions are going to be here like within a week and installed. It's a very, very minor item as well. And then the same kind of goes for the concrete sidewalk, whereas if we had the developer install it right now, and they go and build a house tomorrow, they'll have to rip all the sidewalk out and do it again. So that's why we're just holding that minor security, and we said for another 2 years, we're doing a similar one for Arrow Woods where there's a ton of sidewalk that hasn't been constructed yet, and we're gonna hold some securities there. So we would just view these things as very minor and not critical to assuming the subdivision where we're gonna have ownership of roads and services.
Answer your question?
If I may,
Yeah.
I have one more. So you base those costs on obviously no one in the industry or whatever, but then you should be collecting a little bit extra, especially if it could be up to 2 years before you even see anything come to fruition. Because then you have costs increase, inflation and stuff. I just feel like in some instances, we've had matters where, well, we've already assumed it, there's nothing we can do about it now. Or, you know what I mean? So I'm kind of have that in the back of my head.
Yeah, well, so can you increase the funds?
The boulevard trees were like a line item in the subdivision agreement at a fixed cost, so we can't really change that one. The concrete sidewalk is just an estimate and with same as the belt extension, so. I think this is pretty low risk. I don't think we're gonna be back here in 2 years saying, oh, this didn't get done and we don't have enough money to do it. The sidewalk definitely will get done. It has to be done as the houses are constructed. If those houses never get constructed within 2 years, we're just gonna make them do it anyway.
Okay, any other questions on it? Oh, Mr. Vazy, I keep forgetting about you. You're so far away.
Story of my life. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The holdbacks, does that include the top coat on the street? The pavement?
Through the chair, that's been completed already.
Has it? Okay, perfect. I've been away for a month, so, you know.
Vacation, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's the only one I had.
Okay, so everybody in favor of passing the bylaw?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So we've got, what's that? We're gonna have a public meeting next. We have to wait with the planning update because it's too close to 6 o'clock, right? You got 1 minute if anybody wants to use the services around here.
3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay.
Take a break.
Yeah, take a 3-minute break, go ahead. we'll call this planning meeting to order. Monday, December 16th. We're looking at a zoning bylaw amendment for 5706 Lakeshore Road. The meeting will be streamed live and recorded for public viewing on the town's YouTube page. Any councillor has a pecuniary interest, declare it at the appropriate time, please. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment has been submitted by Brad Zanting, agent for JN Ventures Limited, to amend the town of Plympton-Wyoming Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 797 of 2003 by changing the zoning of the eastern portion of the lands municipally known as 5706 Lakeshore Road from agricultural to residential 1. Residential 1 zoning to permit a single detached dwelling and recognize an existing accessory structure on the site. The subject property was the subject of an approved severance, consent B 1424 of a 2.032 hectare 5-acre lot. This rezoning is a condition of the consent. So we have Mr. Bougen present, Ms. Rodriguez, Mr. Wolvette, and myself. And staff is
Mike.
and Mike at a distance, virtually. Mr. Vasey. Okay, and then we have staff, Randy Burke and Maria Cosa Rossi, Mr. De Silva, Benzie Baird, and Adam Sabansky. Could you give us confirmation of notification? Sir,
Your worship, I can confirm the notification process was complete for the application.
So both notices, the notice and the map, correct? Okay. So who's giving our, Randy Shea, are you giving our planning report? So and I'll read the motion, okay? Moved by Mr. Bougen, seconded by Ms. Rodriguez. That's a report by Randy Shea, planner, dated December 9, 2024, regarding zoning bylaw amendment application 138 of 2024, affecting lands known as 5706 Lakeshore Road, submitted by Brad Zanting, agent for JN Ventures Limited, be received. And now you can give your report.
So thank you, your worship. So as you mentioned, the owner of the subject lands has submitted a zoning bylaw amendment application. The zoning bylaw amendment application is a result of a previous severance that was approved by the Committee of Adjustment in May, in which, due to the severance, the current A2 zoning was no longer appropriate for kind of the proposed use size, just for the lot in general, was no longer appropriate. The subject lands does consist of an accessory structure, which is why there is a site-specific residential 1 zone. So the bylaw 138 specifically, so it does allow for any use that is permitted within the R1 zone. So that's mainly low density residential, so a single detached dwelling, as well as accessory uses to a permitted use in the R1. So what makes this site specific is that it is acknowledging the existing building structure and uses accessory to a permitted use, as well as the bylaw does note that the renovation, replacement, or expansion of the existing accessory building shall not be permitted until a dwelling is placed on the property and shall be in compliance with section 3.3.3 and 3.4. The lot is designated for future development within both the County of Lambton official plan and the town of Plympton-Wyoming official plan. This does, however, include an LPAT decision that states that there shall be only 25 single detached dwellings on the property as a whole. So that would have been this property as well as the retained property. So this will be included with one of those numbers. So therefore at 22 lots, just for council's knowledge on that there. And so in the town of Plympton-Wyoming official plan, it is designated Lakeshore residential area, which the main use there is for low density residential dwellings in accordance with the residential policies. The report does go over accessory building policies that are in the town official plan for low density residential. And it does state that appropriate uses of accessory buildings in residential areas include storing tools, equipment, just to do with the maintenance of the house and the property. So therefore, that is, the accessory structure shall be used for those things once this bylaw, if passed by council,
Although the structure is quite significant in size, it is a large residential lot, because it is approximately 5 acres. And this particular zoning in the low density residential R1 zone will accommodate for any future development that were to go through on kind of the retained lands as well as the surrounding neighborhoods. And with that, that's kind of everything from planning. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Any questions from council?
Building, the existing building that's on there presently is being used by sea transport, back transport trucks. I see in here that would all have to be removed. Is that correct? Now that building for future, would that any commercial business or anything be allowed in that building?
Through your worship, with the residential one zoning, no, the only kind of commercial use that could potentially be allowed is through a home occupation once the dwelling is constructed on the lot, but it's not designated for commercial use. So therefore, the answer is no.
Would have to be connected to the residential house.
Yes.
So
And the policies associated with home occupations as well.
That's, through your worship, I was just gonna add, the policies regarding home occupation would speak to the square footage that's allowed to be used in that. I just want you to think that whole building would be a home occupation. It does speak to how much of the home or an accessory building can be used for a home occupation in the zoning bylaw.
and I guess my second question would be, why 5 acres versus what we've been doing for several of these recent severances that are 2 acres or maybe just a little bit bigger?
Yes, so through your worship, so this isn't considered a surplus farm dwelling severance. This lot is located within the settlement boundary as well as designated like the residential area. This severance application, so it would have been addressed there. There was a previous severance application before that kind of did acknowledge that this 5 acres was to be severed in the past. So it's kind of a number of applications that led us to the 5 acres that was available to be severed, and that's kind of why that number was permitted.
That was requested in the past, the 5 acres?
Yes, in the past.
How long ago would that have been?
So this severance application went through in May, and then the previous application there was 2 lots severed from the top of it. I think that might have been heard early in this year, so potentially January. I don't have the exact date. I can get it, but.
Okay.
Ms. Rodriguez?
So I do know, you didn't put it in the report, but you did specify, so we don't have a map of the entire property as a whole, and then there was 1 severance done with 7 lots, and then 2 more, or 1, then a second severance for 2 lots. And now this severance, is that right?
So the 7 lots, my understanding, are not included in the 25. And then so two severances have been from the top of the property, and then so this would be the 3rd, which would make 22.
Okay, which would take the 25 to 22, and the 22 left would be on that remaining parcel of land. And the 22 was designated 22 because it's on septic. Correct.
It was through an OLT decision, which states specifically, so.
Mr. Zanting, do you have any things?
I just have one quick, just one point of clarification. Are the 7 included in the 25 or not included in the 25?
My understanding was they were not.
There has been some debate on that in the past. I don't know if we formally recognize that. I do believe there is a variation between what the OLT stated and what the intent of the settlement was. If I'm not mistaken, our lawyers provided Mr. Santing's lawyers on how to rectify that situation. So it is currently not legally clear whether it is what the total count was. But I do believe our legal team provided Mr. Santing with options to see that rectified.
So it's not 22?
Through your worship, I guess I suggest speaking with the lawyer to determine that. I don't have that correspondence.
I'm pretty sure that what's left over is allowed to have 22.
So we're talking two different things. There is a, with the retained lands, which there is an initial OLT settlement, which brought in this first 7 lots. There is a secondary OLT settlement after that fact that brought into 25 lots. The OLT in their statement, may have not quoted the correct number of lots, which the developer and we have been working on. We have provided some information to the developer to help rectify that concern, but to the best of my knowledge, at this time, we have not moved further on that. So the number of lots is currently unclear because of that. But yes, so we cannot legally say the number of lots at this time due to that ambiguity of the OLT's decision.
So just to be clear, 22 would be the max, possibly less 7. It's kind of what you're stating. Where the ambiguity.
It depends on what. Okay, theoretically, possibly, but when we received it for 7 and 25.
Yeah.
When the OLT provided settlement, it whether purposely or accidentally lumped it in. So I can't get into additional details other than the number of lots are ambiguous at this time. But as we're doing individual severances at this time, the final number does not become an issue until such time that we receive an application that would exceed or surpass those numbers.
Did you have anything more to add, Mr. Sandy? Yes.
I have a question. So this septic is on a septic system on each lot that we're talking here, or is this septic system gonna get attached to the one that's on Hillsborough?
So we're only today talking about the existing drive shed or structure off of Lakeshore Road.
Yep.
When that has a building built for a dwelling, it would have to have its own individual septic system. Any future lot that is built on the remaining amount of land would have to either be connected to a municipal sewer or have its own septic system. They cannot share septic systems.
Okay, but see what the letter that we got, you're talking about another 22 lots going down Townsend line, right?
In theory,
That's what this is all about.
Today is solely about the rezoning of the
Yep.
current building that faces Lakeshore Road.
Yep.
And potentially a residential building near it. The front 5 acres of that farm is only what is being discussed today. The remaining lands are for future development still. There's been a lot of applications to this property, so I can see how it's kind of gone around, but the intent of today is only to discuss the front 5 acres off of Lakeshore Road.
Okay, that's all we're allowed to talk about then. Is that fair?
That's up to the chair whether she lets you talk about other matters, but today.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that, and I'm starting to pick up what's going on here. I'm not a guy that comes to council very often, but
The intent of today was to look at the rezoning of the front 5 acres.
5 acres, I kind of got that as soon as you started talking. Okay, so as far as the other 22 lots, because that's kind of come up in discussion here too, that has nothing to do with today then.
It's nothing to
sir.
do with today, and I would prefer to stay out of it tonight. Because I'm
Okay, and I'm
here.
pardon?
I'm merely here temporarily, and I don't want to get into the rest of that property. Along Townsend
To
line.
put everyone at ease, the balance of those lands are still zoned agricultural.
Yep.
When it is time to develop them, they will have to come in for rezoning to residential. They will also have to have a draft plan of subdivision, which also has input from the public incorporated into it.
Right.
So when the balance of the lands are developed, there is ample opportunity for the public to provide comment on that matter.
Okay, is there a permit request for future development of that land?
Not beyond what was discussed here today.
Okay, not beyond the 5 acres that you're talking about now.
But it is worth noting, it is,
Yes.
the county has already identified that entire parcel.
Yes.
So this council holds very little power in terms of that land becoming development because it's already pre-existing official plans.
You've already stepped over council here. Is what
The county of Lambton has designated for future residential the town's official plan had to follow suit and designate it for future residential. So under both official plans, it's designated for future residential.
But it hasn't went through yet. But
It's not-
they basically overstepped this council.
So without getting too far down the rabbit hole,
Yeah.
designation is kind of your overreaching guiding document. Zoning is on your ground level, kind of legislative document. And then, of course, subdividing is how you create each lot. So the big step is step one, which has already been done. And there's 3 more steps to allow for home development on that property.
Of which the public will be circulated.
Yes, and the public is part of most of those processes.
Yeah, like we'll get another letter saying
Yes,
we can talk about,
it would be very much the same as today, just on a different scale.
yeah.
Through your worship. Yeah, so the remainder of the lands will have to go through this exact same process. So if it is to be rezoned in any way, then the public notice will go out and you can come back, and then that would be the appropriate time to provide comments on kind of the retained A2 and.
Yeah, because it's still designated agriculture land.
Designated
Yeah, so
residential.
It's designated residential in our official plan, in our zoning bylaw, it's zoned agriculture, so no houses can be built there, well. No, 22 houses can't be built there through its current zoning.
Right.
But through the designation, it can, but no matter what, he will have to come back for a rezoning of those lands. Just like we're here today, for the front part, 5 acres.
Yep.
So the same process, and then the public will be able to come and provide comments to council at that time.
And do our comments mean anything?
We like to listen to them.
Okay. I'm glad to see heads that are going up and down because,
We're sort of tied.
yeah, I know
Let's not
we're
get
getting
in.
on a different topic here. So the letter will come out.
Notice, sorry, through your, notice will go out just like that, and
Yep.
before the council meeting, you can also email, I think Mackenzie Baird's email is there right now, you can email him with any comments or concerns.
Yep.
Or call the office and speak with, it'll be myself or Maria, the planners on the file directly.
Can I ask one question? It is about the.
Sure, why not? Yeah.
So if it's sectioned off 5 acres and one house goes on it, and then it's already rezoned. Is it potentially, is it possible that then you section off 3 more acres and put 3 houses on there?
He can't, he can always apply. But there is one big building there, you know, which takes up quite a bit of room and may curtail it a bit. Okay. Let's go ahead.
Just some names and addresses for the record, the official record.
Did you signed?
Oh, you're on there. Perfect.
I
Thank
think
you.
you signed. So if we can maybe go back to this motion, I'll read it again. The report by Randy Shea, planner, dated December 9, 2024, regarding zoning bylaw amendment 138 of 2024 affecting land zone as 5706 Lakeshore Road, submitted by Brad Zanting, agent for JN Ventures Limited, received. All in favor? Carried. Okay, so, any correspondence on this?
Through your worship, we did receive one piece of correspondence that should have been included on the agenda. I can put on.
2 pieces, right? 2 emails?
Oh, yes, we did receive 2 emails. The first was just requesting notification related to the application, included for 30, and then another one was. Yeah, this is the development, and I can put that on the screen.
Does anybody want to address this email? I haven't read I haven't seen this email, so.
I feel like it was addressed.
I feel like you addressed it.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
It's just all about.
yeah,
and it was, this gentleman kind of stated the same thing. He was kind of on that same page, so yeah.
any other questions from council? Yes.
One more clarifying question, and the lady over there asked this question, which I was going to ask. There can be more severances on that 5 acre parcel? I mean, we need to make that clear here. Can there be another severance on that 5 acre parcel?
So For you, your worship, the owner could definitely apply for a severance and that could be assessed and be heard by the Committee of Adjustment. If there was a severance, it would impact the numbers associated with that decision. So not to say that a severance would be approved, but the owner could apply.
Are there,
Okay, yeah, it's complicated. Okay, that's good. That's, the lady asked the same question that I was thinking, and I'm thinking of that building on there. What I'm thinking of. So that's why I asked whether it could be a commercial, that building or not. So, okay.
Mr. Baird, did you want to say something?
Or just Counselor
He
Vasey.
got his hand up again, Mr. Basie.
Yeah, to sever that lot again, you'd have to have enough room to put another septic system in, which we know is a minimum 2 acres, so depending on the size of the house that goes in there, I doubt you're gonna get another house in there with another septic system. That's all.
Thank you. Any further questions from anyone here? I'll read the motion. Moved by Ms. Rodriguez, seconded by Mr. Rolvet. Bylaw 138 of 2024 being a bylaw to rezone the subject property from an agricultural 2 zone to a site-specific residential 1-3 zone with the following conditions be taken as having been read 3 times and finally passed. Your clerk be authorized. Sign the said bylaw accordingly. Number 1. Any current uses that do not comply with the residential zoning shall cease, included but not limited to any trailers located on the property. Number 2, property must be brought into general compliance for the site-specific R13 zoning and maintained in accordance with all municipal bylaws. Number 3, general grading of the property line is required to the satisfaction of the town of Plympton-Wyoming and the county of Lambton. Any more discussion on this bylaw? So is everyone in favor of this? Passed. So the applicant, the registered owner of the land, the minister, and a specified person or public body who made verbal presentations at a public meeting like today or provided written correspondence before a decision was made regarding the bylaw may appeal the council's decision of a zoning bylaw amendment to the Ontario Land Tribunal, OLT, within 20 days from the date of the notice of the decision of the bylaw is given. That's, everybody understand? You can appeal if you want, right? If there's anything you don't like it.
Sorry,
Nothing, you are listening to me.
you're hard to hear. You don't talk real loud in here.
Right?
No, ceramics are hard.
People think I holler.
That's much better.
Moved by Ms. Rodriguez and seconded by Mr. Bougen that the public meeting be adjourned. All in favor? Thank you, Carrie. Speak up next time.
Okay.
Okay.
The noise in here is not great.
No, it's okay. Bye, folks.
Thank you.
Night.
Myself now. Okay, we're going into the planning update that Ms. Kosarasi has.
You can see the number of the agenda.
6.2.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Back to the regular.
The information report by Maria Kosarasi, Senior Planner, dated December 9, 2024, providing an overview and update on the status of the 2024 planning applications be received.
Much better.
Okay, I'll try and keep it up, sorry. Any discussions? Or you just tell us about it now, okay?
Thank you. So this is just a brief update and overview for the past year. The town has had a highly productive year. We've experienced a significant 48% increase in planning related activities and applications compared to 2023. In 2024, staff processed a total of 107 planning applications, which is up from the 72 processed in 2023. The increase encompasses a range of applications from minor variances, consents, plan of subdivision, condominium, site plan. it ran the gamut of all processes. So the Committee of Adjustment and Council met monthly to review the applications, with the exception of August. And of the 107 total application, approximately half were heard and reviewed by the Committee of Adjustment at 47%, and the balance of 53% were heard by Council. So looking ahead to next year, we are anticipating a further increase in planning applications, driven largely by rising inquiries related to surplus farm dwellings coverages. Also proposals for infill lots, development there, and new housing development, including plans of subdivision and condominium. So this is also being driven by the recent legislative changes, Bill 185, the 2024 Provincial Planning Statement, and the Minister's regulation regarding additional residential units, and initiatives related to affordable housing. So all of these things are anticipated to further contribute to the growth of planning applications next year.
Any questions? Go ahead, Ms. Oh, did you want to say something more?
Yes, I just wanted to add one more thing. I wanted to acknowledge and thank Mackenzie for all his hard work. He put together all the, he gathered all the data and created the graphs and pie charts that were presented in the report, which I think is a very effective tool to give council an idea of the progress and productivity. Also, staff are recommending that a report of this nature be provided on a biannual basis. I think that would be a good benchmark because it'll take care of the first part of the year where we saw a rise in about March and May and June of applications. And then again in the fall, we saw it in October and September largely. Those were the heavier months in terms of higher application rates. So thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah, that was pretty fancy.
Gives a good vision.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, do you mean semi-annual, not biannual?
No.
Like twice a year?
Twice a
It's
year.
semi.
Also by.
Really?
You mean,
Biannual, I would look at it every other.
Well, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, because it is both. In our software system, we have biannual.
Twice a year.
Let's do it twice a year.
Anyway. The only thing I didn't really could pick out clearly, was how many new homes were built this year compared to last year? How many actual buildings went up this year compared to last year?
So through your worship, that would be information that we would need to gather through the Building Services Department. If that's something that council is wanting information on, certainly staff can come back with that information.
Did you say you might have that information?
Not yet.
Oh.
The year isn't over, so I won't have.
Okay,
Close
so you
enough.
were bringing.
Well, I don't normally bring, we do some reporting. It's not until the new year, so we can definitely bring that information to council when we have it, but the year it's not done.
Okay, and thank you for that clarification, because I remember we talked about it and you said normally you would bring that in January when it's done. But then this came and it confused me. I thought.
Planning, building.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they're separate departments, although we all work so closely together. Yeah, the building, planning wouldn't necessarily know. I see the monthly permits that are issued. But I can't compare to last year yet. So.
And in all fairness, I did look at your the
Yep.
monthly thing you sent, and I still can't make heads or tails of what numbers what. Some of them flow and some don't, so.
Yeah, I'll show you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you can show some of them.
Yeah.
So we're all in favor of receiving this report? No more questions? Thank you. Very. No bylaws, right?
I think it's
Number
time.
7? Okay. So now. A minute, where are we here? Housing Infrastructure and Communities Canada Short-Term Rental Enforcement Fund. So who's going to discuss that one?
Thank you, Your Worship. So staff was provided a link to this grant and we did review it. Given the timing of our OPA ZBA, I don't believe we will technically be eligible for this grant. So I believe council can direct us to submit the grant. If you do so, please keep in mind that it's very likely we will not receive the grant, as we will not be in compliance with the requirements of the grant. However, we can always try. Staff's preference being that we're going into the budget, everything else would be not to submit. But again, if council's wants to take the risk on it, we can spend the staff time to do so. Bear in mind that we do not meet the minimum requirements currently.
So if we were to try and meet, like if this OPA and zoning bylaw amendment were to be done, when would it be done? Not until the end of January. And the date is January 24, am I correct? So could we get it done by the 23rd?
Not in meeting appeal timelines and everything else.
Notice timelines, appeal timelines.
So you have 20 days notice, which would set us into early January or mid-January at best. But then you also have a 20-day appeal, so there's 40 days of time that would push us past the date, no matter how we divided it up.
So did it say what, how much would this would be worth? Anywhere? What would it say?
It says up to 100,000, but it depends on the program.
That doesn't mean you get 100,000.
Correct.
Any other comments? Yeah, go ahead.
So, further to that, if I may, so it seems to me, reading it, the only eligible portion would be the 5,800.
Probably, yes.
And we're already agreed to collect the 5,800, so it's not likely we're gonna be losing out.
We're not losing out on a $100,000 grant to deal with short-term rentals. At best, we're losing out of maybe $5,000.
So could we still be eligible for the 5,000? Okay. Any other comments?
I would suggest that the motion just be amended to be received if it has.
Ignore the bold line at the top.
Okay, Mr. Bougen and Mr. Wilbert, I'm removing the bold line.
Well, it was just on the lead sheets.
I think the whole motion is that they're directed to apply, so we have to change.
So-
We gotta defeat it basically, probably, right?
Yeah,
I'll probably do the cleanest surface.
So it says that staff be directed to apply to the short-term rental enforcement fund to seek assistance for implementation and enforcement of the short-term rental licensing program in the town of Plympton-Wyoming. Is everybody? To do nothing? Okay, so it's defeated. Thank you. Since we are gonna meet the timelines. Okay. That's correspondence. Mr. Wilbert, second by Rodriguez, that the correspondence items A to C relating to recommended reading and routine approval and information items not otherwise addressed by resolution be noted as received by the Plympton-Wyoming Council and filed accordingly. Does anybody want to have any questions about the correspondence? Nothing?
Have the last.
Not today? Good girl. Okay, everyone in favor? Carried. New business. Does anyone got anything to bring up, Mr. Wolfett?
I'm the only one I ask every meeting, when are lights going in? I get asked that every day myself.
Yeah, through your worship, not before the end of the year.
I told somebody at
We tried, now Cogeco is having a minor issue with hydro. There's a lot of moving parts here. But we're all working very hard to get it done. We want it done as soon as possible.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Ms. Rodriguez?
If I may ask on those lights, are the costs escalating with all these hiccups?
No.
And as it relates to Highland Glen Park, I don't know if this really is planning, but has there been any thoughts or on what the plans are to do there, if any, on as far as the logistics for next season?
Your worship, in terms of,
Parking and.
we've been discussing it internally, how we can expand parking, yes.
Okay. Mr. Bougen?
Not for me, thank you.
Nothing? And the staff, anybody have any new business? Mr. McVasey, have you got anything?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Okay, did I say McVasey? Mike Vasey, you misheard.
Oh,
Yeah, okay. All right, so now we're going to move into closed session. Moved by Mr. Wobet, second by is that council move into in-camera meeting of council pursuant to section 239 of the municipal act 2001 as amended following reason. Third-party confidential information that has been supplied in confidence by a third party. Everyone in favor? Carried.